Hi, everyone. So to those of you who are joining us from Europe, a very good morning. I hope you had a very good start to the day. And to those of you who are joining this session from Asia with us, a very good afternoon. So we are really happy to welcome you to this session on a very important topic. And we are also very pleased to have a brilliant speaker who you will get to know in a bit, as well as we'll get to hear from him on the topic. But before we jump into the webinar, I just quickly want to remind you a little bit about the admin note. Please rename yourself in the button where next to your profile, you'll see there is an option for renaming. So first name, last name, and country, so that when you are speaking and engaging with our speaker, we know where you are connecting from. And please kindly mute yourself throughout this session so that there is no background noise when our speaker is presenting and we are running the session. That will be highly appreciated. And as you were, listening to our speaker, as well as, participating in this session, anytime you have any interesting insights to share or have a very, interesting or burning question, please use the chat box. And then a little bit about the format of today's session. So we'll have first a very brief speaker introduction in a bit. And then our speaker will present thematic content on the topic. And then we will jump into question and answer session. And then we will tell you about what to expect for next session. And then we will check out. So our speaker today is Professor Margus Pedaste. He's one of the globally known experts in the field of education technology. He's currently a full professor at the University of at the Institute of Education in University of Tartu, as well as a visiting professor at UC Berkeley in California, United States. He leads the Center for Educational Technology and also the head of Pedagogicum, which is a consortium of all faculties for coordinating teacher education at the University of Tartu. So he's really doing a very important, engaged in very important work to empower teachers and educators like you. He has been involved in really interesting education technology related international projects where he supported learners and teachers to build digital competence as well as inquiry skills. So without further ado, we welcome our speaker to share his slide and start the session. So Margus, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So, hello everybody, and thank you, Jyoti, for kind introduction. I do not have much to add, and definitely you can find more on the internet about ourselves nowadays. If you use AI like ChatGPT, then you can ask about me and then the others as well, who I am and what I am working on. But yes, that's correct. That today I will focus on the topic on what are some of the key concerns and challenges of AI in education. And I should say that I am not an expert of AI, and maybe none of us is actually, because AI is really something that is under development and continuous development in the field of education as well. And one of the concerns in this context might be that it is often developed based on the ideas raised by technical developers and not by educators. So this is maybe one of the messages I will already say now. I am from University of Tartu in Estonia, but currently I am at Berkeley in California. So that if I saw many people saying good morning, good afternoon from different European and Asian countries, then I should say good night to all of you from Berkeley. It's a bit more than 1 a.m. here, and actually it's my last day that just started here. So that in about half a day, I will start traveling back to Europe and we'll meet my colleagues in Estonia again. I would start my topic with some notes from the first webinar. I hope that you all had the chance to participate, or at least to look at the slides and videos what has been done from the previous session. And Dr. Wayne Holmes gave a very good introduction on what is AI, or how he also said that what is not AI, and what we need to take care about AI. And I liked his kind of critical view. Also in the end, he also said that we shouldn't be only critical about this. And at first I thought that my point of view is also kind of critical, but in both of our cases, I think that we are not critical per se, but we are just asking you all to consider why, when, and what to use in applying AI in education. So first note what I took is that AI is nothing new. So he mentioned also the concept of affordances. Affordances are kind of characteristics of something that might be even not explicit, and so that, for example, AI can be used for something that is good, but actually the same tool or environment could be used not only for good but also for bad. But the concept of affordances has been first introduced by some very simple context, like guns, for example. You can do something good with them, but also something very bad. But the same is in education. We can use AI in a way that is really empowering us and our learners, but we can also do it in a way that is not supporting sustainable development of the world. Then the second topic I wanted to link in my presentation is related to meta-analysis. Just to mention, meta-analysis is an analysis that combines many different analyses and tries to generalize the outcomes for making some conclusions. And what Wayne Holmes mentioned is that in general we can say that that AI is in education not ready for that kind of clinical use. Of course, AI is used in many different fields, but in education we are still making the first steps. And in making the first steps, we might fall. We might take wrong passes, so that we have to consider if to continue with something that we already started. But you are the innovators. You are the ones who are responsible in looking back and maybe stopping one or other way of using AI in education. And then if you really see strong evidences that this is or that is working to achieve my goals, then it's definitely worth of using further. The third topic is that we should focus not only on teaching and learning with, but also about AI. And it's very much related with the previous topic, which shows that that if we understand how AI works, then we can understand also where and for what we can use it, and where. But what might be even more important nowadays is that where not to use it. Maybe you have seen the studies showed how much has been ChatGPT used during the last few months. And my question is why? And what is the cost of using ChatGPT? I understand that out of curiosity, it's interesting to ask different questions, or like in case of Google as well. We can say that Google is there, ChatGPT or other formats of generative AI are there, and why not use them? But actually, the question is that if we use them, then we also have to take into account that it has some costs. Some cost, because every search is actually done by use of some energy, and the energy sources are limited in our Earth. I will come back to this later. What about teachers? I think that teachers are the change agents in changing the education and in innovating the education, which means that if Wayne Holmes mentioned disempowerment, then I believe that we are on the same page in this sense that actually AI could disempower teachers, but it shouldn't, which means that we as teachers need to take active role in making decisions, in deciding where to use, when to use, what to use, and more importantly, where not to use, when not to use, and what we shouldn't use in education. So that it's related to my note about teachers' agency. I will come back to that later as well. Then he also mentioned techno-solutionism, which for me resonates very well with the idea that actually this AI use should be guided more by teachers and students' needs, not about technical possibilities, technical affordances, to come back to this topic. So this is something to consider, but actually the recent theories about educational technology innovation are focusing on not talking about the lead of technical solutions or pedagogical solutions, but actually in their mutual involvement in designing the best solutions, so that we are talking about the idea that actually we need that kind of test beds where teachers, students, technical developers, and researchers are working together in order to find the best solutions. So that again, I encourage all of you to connect to different kinds of people in order to make the best decisions and develop further different existing materials. And one of the messages what Dr. Wayne Holmes also had was that AI-generated content might look good, but it might be not always good. And it's really dangerous. It might be that we rely on AI, but actually this information provided by AI might be misleading, and I will come back to that based on my Berkeley experience, how it has been taken into account here. And final question, what I wanted to note from this speech is who is actually responsible. And a short question is that has been also discussed in different international contexts, also in the context of editors of different journals, has been the question how AI should be mentioned in the section of methods of publishing articles, and if AI should be one of the co-authors of the articles. So and then the question shortly is no, actually humans are the responsible ones who make the decisions, who should have the agency to make decisions to use or not to use AI and the way to use it. So my plan shortly is to talk about 6 topics, and again, this is just a short introduction, and I do not have too many slides, so that I do hope that we will have a very fruitful discussion later, and I'm happy to reply to you in email as well. So first, expectations of teachers, a study we conducted in Estonia, examples of natural language processing that has been used in many countries and many research groups, including the research group at University of Berkeley here, and needs analysis and quality of the AI and data. So this is again something I look based on Dragan Kasevich messages we discussed about 2 months ago in Germany in a meeting, and teacher agency, which is a solution to avoid disempowerment of teachers, digital competence, which is in conclusion something that is needed, and social technical imaginaries, the main message that our vision defines the future, so that we have to be careful about what we dream of, because it seems that the dreams might become reality. So, expectations of teachers. We conducted a few years ago a survey among 140 Estonian K-12 teachers. And now we are planning a new study, because so much has been developed since then in collaboration with people from the United States and different countries in Europe. And according to that, we can say that teachers have quite limited knowledge about AI and how it should or could support them in practice. But they will see a lot of potential and or ways where we can say that they have the need for AI, or where they expect that AI could help them. They see that AI could help them to access different content, to adapt it, because we really need to adapt nowadays much more in our classrooms due to multicultural, multilingual settings, sometimes also different people with different cognitive abilities, so that this differentiation and adaptation is something that is characteristic to the classroom nowadays. And again, teachers might be in need for that kind of system that really help them to adapt to that. And this is also visible if you are aware about the international OECD teacher study, TALIS, that also shows that in most of the countries, teachers do not feel themselves well prepared for teaching in multicultural or in multicultural classroom, or in a classroom with where the students are with different abilities. So it is a challenge, and we have to think how AI could help here. Then we asked teachers different input also about what they would like to have from the AI if they have that kind of superpower, and we clustered, characterized based on cluster analysis, different categories of expectations. And what we could think of use of AI is effectiveness, efficiency, rapport with students, course planning, personal attributes, and personal skills. So that it is something where we could use. The generalization from that is that we have to think what is the goal in our mind, what we would like to achieve using AI. So, and this article and this study has been designed by our former colleague now working in Germany, Irene Jonta. And here is a more specific list of teachers' expectations of superpowers before systematizing them. Speed, personalization, assessment, empathy, which is also interesting. So that this is something that could actually guide you as well in thinking what is important for you. And at one point, we have to think, is speed really something that we need? I have also said in some sessions that maybe we can cover the school curriculum in more than 12 years, as it is now in Estonia, thanks to AI, thanks to learning support. But on the other hand, we still need some time to learn, and maybe speed is not the most important goal. As you see, the content related or understanding related topics are not at the top of the goals here. So that's why one of the critical notes here is that maybe we have to consider how AI could really help deep learning, better understanding of the learning outcomes, not only speeding up or something like that. Also, the speed is also, or immediacy is also sometimes important. Like in case of assessment, we know from research that immediate feedback is much more effective than delayed feedback. If we would like to have high quality teaching and learning process, then we should consider if AI could help us in giving feedback. And this brings me to the work done in University of California at Berkeley. I'm working currently at Professor Marcia Lin's team. Marcia Lin has been working for decades on educational technology use in education, more specifically in middle school science classes, and she has interesting background because she has been also working in Apple and IBM, and she started as a true programmer many years ago. But now she has a nice team who is working on web-based inquiry science environment, WISE shortly. And they have successfully used AI in one format for some time already, and more specifically natural language processing systems. And there are many different tools available on the internet that could be trained based on your own data. What is a significant amount of research focusing now on is to understand how the natural language processing, or in general AI generated feedback or assessment, is comparable with human feedback or human generated assessment. And so it has been done here as well. And in this case, it has been used in the context of initiating dialogues with students. We know that in dialogues and in the studies also, it is showed that actually students need to express themselves in order to learn something. They need to express themselves to their peers, to teachers, but their peers and teachers are not always there to give immediate feedback. And in this context, if we have a trained natural language processing model, then this could give automatic feedback and to engage students in interactive dialogues. This is something what they have successfully done. And we also have discussed if now generative AI could be used to replace the developed models. The models have been developed usually based on around 1,000 of students' responses in order to see how is the quality of the responses and of the automatically generated feedback. And in their case, the agreement between the AI and humans has been more than 80%, which is really helpful. But they have also studied what are the students' opinions about AI generated dialogue, and there it seems that it is still challenging, because the students also see that they need to learn something new. They need to learn how to communicate with AI, how to ask questions, or how to respond to AI in a way that the feedback or the assessment is appropriate. So another topic I touch shortly is coordinated by one Australian professor, Dragan Karshevitz, who mentions some topics that are very relevant in this context as well. AI is using a lot of data, which might be a problem in itself, because sometimes we might not have enough data. And teachers have to make decisions in a limited data, if just a limited data is available. We do it based on the predictions, based on our former experience in similar situations. So does AI actually. But in case of humans and AI, it is a bit different, and then therefore we have to think that how AI should be informed by education, so that more we can see that we have to see teachers on this picture, not only AI and students working together. So, and what is also an important message here that often we would like to have simple solutions, but in education, simple solutions might be just wrong, too simplistic in order to have some validity, like measurement validity and reliability, which are often concerns in the studies about AI use in education. For example, for long learning analytics, we haven't mentioned that term that has been maybe more on the discussions than AI so far. Often it is just based on clicks and how long somebody is not using some learning materials, but watching some learning materials, so that it's challenging. Generalizability of the predictive models is also limited. How we can transfer something from one situation to another one. That's why that kind of specifically contextually trained NLP models might be even more useful nowadays than AI in a general level. The third topic I would like to mention is by my good colleague Ali Leyen from our university, teacher agency. And we work together on the topic based on Gert Biesta, Sarah Robinson, and Mark Priestley. And this is important to mention in order to empower teachers. And again, the message here is that we might have some competence about AI and about education, about learning and teaching, but we have to take that kind of projective aspect on this, so that what comes in the future. From the past, we have personal, professional competence, and we might have different beliefs and values related to AI as well, but we are the ones who need to see the future, the projective dimension, what is the professional purpose in long term and in short term, what we should do with AI in education. And then we come together in the center here on this model of teacher agency, ecological model of teacher agency. In the center, there is the present situation, practical evaluative situation where we perceive and interpret different information according to the professional competence and professional purpose we have, in order to develop different alternative solutions in one or other situation, and then to make decisions, informed decisions based on this, and to behave accordingly. So that the message here is also in the middle that that there are some cultural, structural, and material conditions that should be taken into account. And this might be very different in different contexts, in different countries, like in the ASEFClassNet participants context, for example. And the material conditions might be quite similar in different countries sometimes, or at least potentially they could be developed in a similar way. Structural conditions, how and what is used and what is allowed, what kind of rules have been defined for using AI, and even more important, cultural. For example, in our context, I often mention that that we have to think if our learning culture is more collaboration or competition oriented. And again, we should take into account how, for example, if we would like to have more collaboration-oriented approach in our education systems, then we should think how AI could support that kind of approach, not to constrain. This brings me to the digital competence framework, what we have developed and now used with our colleagues. So in general, it could be also translated to AI competence. And you could again start thinking on your own competence, your digital competence or AI use competence. And in this case, we could actually differentiate three general levels, like generic competence, contextual competence, and transformative competence. And those might be related more to individuals with your own competence, and focus on community, society, or environment. So that we have to start to think on more general levels, not only on our own needs, but also on the needs of our professional community, and even more broadly on the needs that we have from the global challenges, for example. And this brings my focus often to the transformative competence, so that we have to think how to creatively adapt digital technologies, including AI, in our professional context. And even more importantly, I would encourage you to think on ethical and responsible, critical reflexive use of AI based on this framework. So that what is ethical, what is responsible, and how we can reflect on the AI use critically in order to not use it further, or to use it in a way that is really meaningful. And on the next slides, the slides will be shared later as well, is a lot of text. It's not for me to read or discuss everything about this right now. It's more for you as a complete overview about the framework, showing about generic competence, contextual and transformative competences, to get a better understanding about what is behind of those different competencies. And then I would stop a little bit on this transformative competence. So we have to think on what is the teachers or teacher educators' competence for innovation, to what extent, how often, what quality we need to have in use of AI. And in case of ethical and responsible use, what I mean here is that we should be also the role models. How we use technology, including AI, is actually often learned by our students as well. So that we have to think how we are responsible and smart, meaningful users of AI in our practice in order to expect something from our students as well. And just to give a short example, based on the discussion with my colleague, professor of biophysics in the University of Tartu, Ari Freiberg, who made a very interesting presentation that really touched me about a year ago on the main idea that we all know that we have the information explosion around us. But we also know, we have learned at school that we have the principle of equivalence of mass, energy, and information could be added here. Because now it has been showed that in order to generate or store some information, we need some energy. But energy could be created based on mass. And how, that is how we can calculate how much costs actually one bit of information. What is the mass of one bit of information? This mass is very small, as you see, but if you count how many different bits of information we will have in 1 second of video recording, for example, then you will see that we are in the era of informational disaster. And if you calculate the growth, take into account the growth of information, digital information generated by humans so far, it is showed that if you continue in the same way or even exponentially growingly, then it is 100 to 150 years, then all the matter of the earth has been used. So that at one point we have to responsibly decide when not to use AI or other digital tools if it is possible to do something comparably without AI and educational digital technologies. And this brings me to the last topic, socio-technical imaginaries. Looking at the time, I only mentioned that from Yazanov's framework. Now we are a nice project with our Swedish colleagues, and we have really looked at the way how technology changes the future and how technology is changing as well, and the framework here focusing on future classrooms shows that actually the imaginaries about the future tend to become true. So that's why we have to think how to create that kind of vision about the future in order to change the future, so that it's in our hands. And for the conclusions, I have no conclusions, only work ahead together with you. As I mentioned, we have to form the teams of researchers, teachers, students, and technology developers in order to make wise decisions, critical discussions on why to use AI, what data, and so on, and what not to use. And then we have to evaluate our competencies in this context as well. So, and we have to keep the balance. So that's why I put on the last slide a picture of me looking at the Berkeley hills here. So thank you, and all the questions are welcome, either now in our limited time or later on this email.
Excellent, Margus. I think a lot of really useful and interesting information for our participants. So thank you so much. I have a couple of questions from the chat box and some comments as well. But before that, please, if you have any question, raise your hand or feel free to post them in the chat box. First of all, a very relevant questions regarding NLP. So it's from Shimin and Chulun Tumur and Kapi. 3 of them have the same question regarding NLP. So Shimin wants to know from Malaysia, is ChatGPT and iPhone Siri examples of NLP? And Chulun Tumor wants to know, what apps could you name that uses NLP for teaching spoken English? And Kathy says that in China, in senior high school entrance examination, English speaking test, student talk one-on-one with computer software, and then the computer grades, computer generated grades. Are these examples of NLP? So
basically, yes, I wouldn't give any concrete examples right now, but of course you are welcome to write to me, and I can share some of those used here in our context. But in general, what is the difference of generative AI and an NLP? What is usually mentioned is that this generative AI uses a large model in the background that is not specific to the context. And in case of NLP, it is usually defined in a way that there is this specific context taken into account. That's why it is maybe more specific and more localized, which is probably important in our context.
Thank you. So Ruth and Susanna, they give compliments to your study, the WISE study. Will it be possible to share this study and the results with us so that we can share it with the participants they want to know?
Yeah, I should say that this is quite recent study. It has been presented in some conferences. One of those conferences is currently ISLS conference in Montreal, just happening now. So that the conference presentations, when they become available, then I can share them. Yeah, that's true.
Thank you. So once Marcus shared the resources with us, we will be happy to share them with you either through email or on our ASEF learning platform. Thank you. Okay, so Danielle, sorry, my apologies. Daniel Ray from Spain has an interesting comment on European AI Act. So may I invite you to quickly share, Daniel, a bit more about it?
Okay, so the thing is that in the European Union, they are approving now EA Act, which is the law regulating the EA implementation in Europe. And it classifies the use of AI in education as high risk, which is the second worst level. And because of that, AI systems in education in Europe must be monitored by humans at all times, including automatic exam scoring and all these AIs. And my question is that, do you think that this will limit the development or application implementation of AI in education in our schools in Europe in comparison to other regions such as Asia or America, or education will be better in Europe because of this extreme regulation?
Yeah, it's a political question somehow even, so that it's quite loaded as well. So yes, I do think in this way that actually on one hand it's really a risk of not having enough focus on AI research in this case. But on the other hand, we also have to understand that there are some reasons why it has been made in this way, and this is to protect our people and our environment as well in long term. So that I see that there are pros and cons. What I do see here is that what might be a solution, and what I encourage all people to think of, is international collaboration, so that we can actually collaborate with people from other countries, from other regions, and this would help us to conduct different experiments as well. Of course, what we have to consider there is the ethical question as well, research ethics related question. If something is restricted in our context, so that is it good to go to work in another context to do that research, or we should somehow discuss in our debates with colleagues from other continents in order to force them in adopting the same ethical guidelines as well. So that, but to be honest, I do not know the exact reasons behind of that. So that, is it related to ethical concerns, or is it related to some worries about AI, which might be also reasonable, but maybe it's not so important as the ethical concerns in this context.
It is actually because of some kind of ethical moral statement, because it says that artificial intelligence may determine the access to education or the career of a person. So it cannot be just left alone without a human monitoring the AI. It's because of that is high risk.
Yeah, of course, yes. But on the other hand, what I also see that in some cases it might be that what also what is also true is that teachers are also different, so that we might need to monitor teachers as well, what they are doing in the class, and this is often not done in such a way, so that sometimes the AI might really help the teachers. And then definitely, what is my message as well? AI shouldn't replace the teacher, but actually it should be at the hand of teachers and students, and more. What could be also mentioned here is more on teachers' hands, so that teachers should think on how to use it effectively with their students.
Thank you
very
Daniel.
much.
Yeah. Thank you, Margus, as well. I just quickly want to comment on Susanna's comment regarding is there any direction from governments around the world in regulating the use of AI, including for education purposes, taking into consideration how little we know about this explosive scaling up. Actually, there has been some recent studies done by our thematic webinar one speaker, Dr. Wayne Holmes, together with UNESCO, policy guidelines for government. So we can share that resource. Actually, this is one of our reading resources in the list. So you will be learning more about that. But also, if you remember, when you applied for this project, we had a survey where we asked about, if your government has any initiatives on AI. So we are going to compile this study as well. Then you will get to know about, at least for these Asia, Europe countries that are part of our project, whether their government have any initiatives or not. So please wait for that study report to be published. We have a number of other questions. I think I would like to invite Dr. Omar. He has an interesting comment about ChatGPT. Maybe Omar, you can unmute yourself and speak up. And then I also see a few hands raised. So Fernando first, and then so prepare your question, please. And MD Uddin from Bangladesh, please be very precise when you ask questions and try to keep it short. Thank you.
Just a question. It's more of a comment rather than a question. First of all, thank you, and thank you for the interesting presentation. There are many features which have been there. Definitely, they have been explored more. They have been improving more. It's still a growing area. However, it's definitely what intrigues teachers more is because AI now, like ChatGPT, is changing paradigms. It's changing the way we teach and learn. I mean, I'm almost sure, though I haven't conducted a research about this, if there was AI integrated in design tools, for example, or in assistive tools, or in other assessments, definitely they would have left. They can be used in a meaningful way by some educators. However, this huge interest amongst us all, I think it's because we are realizing that it's going to change the way we teach, and the way we used to teach. It's not it must not be any more practical, and maybe what this may lead then to a positive thing, because we may start exploring how AI is being integrated in the tool. I don't want to take more time that I have mentioned in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Margus, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit, just so that we have also done in Estonian context a study on how teachers use technology in their classrooms, and we followed a framework of Puente Dura about SAMR. Maybe you have familiar with that. substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. That resonates with your comment very well. And actually, we have found that most often teachers just use technology for substitution, so that they have, their own goals, what they have had so far, and then they try to replace the tools with digital tools. And the same might be with AI sometimes. But what we haven't seen much is modification and redefinition of educational goals or education, the process in general. So that this is something that that might be done in case of a few teachers, but not in the mainstream of our schools. So that it is still challenging and the question for the future. Thank you for the comment. Yes.
So Fernando, the floor is yours. Thank you, Dr. Omar and Margus, for commenting on this very important issue. Fernando?
Yeah,
thank you
so much. Yeah, Professor Margus, thank you for giving us a lot of insights regarding researches regarding AI. But my main question right now, how will these different AI researches be actualized in a teacher level? Because right now we are living in an educational situation where marketing of AI is getting more popular compared to the dominance of research-based studies regarding AI.
And your question was just to reflect, so that how we could keep up with the techno solutions.
Correct.
Okay.
Within the teacher level.
Yeah, I think that what is important here is what we haven't mentioned so far is that how teachers learn something new, and more and more studies show that the effective learning of teachers is done in learning communities. Again, those learning communities could be in face-to-face settings in one school, which is the best way, but in some cases they could be organized online between teachers from different schools and even from different countries. So that what I really encourage in this context is to join some of those communities where those topics are discussed critically in order to understand what and where and when really works in case of some context, and then you can translate it to your own context. So that I encourage active participation in those kind of communities, because in my understanding, we have also done another study focusing on teachers' professionalism. And in this context, we see teachers as professional learners, and these professional learners is not only competent on something and keeping up with the changes in the world, but this teacher is also responsible in contributing to community development and let's say quality of other teachers, so that we all are responsible in the AI used by other teachers as well. So that's why we need to learn together, learn from each other, and also contribute in the professional development of our colleagues.
Thank you so much. Highly appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Fernando, and thank you, Margus. So, MD Uddin from Bangladesh, please prepare your question. But before that, I quickly want to thank our one of our faculty collaboration expert participant, Jyotsna, who actually already shared quite a number of resources in the chat box. She's involved with our expert, Dr. Wayne Holmes and UNESCO at the University of Nantes. She's also working to produce resources for teachers. Jyotsna, could I invite you to quickly talk about a few of those resources that could be useful for our participants?
Yeah, hi. So like I shared, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I shared a couple of resources in the chat. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your presentation, Professor. And so what I was saying is that UNESCO released a Beijing Consensus on Artificial Intelligence in Education. I think it was in 2019. So I have shared the link of that. And the EU AI ethical guidelines on education came last year in October, at the end of October, I think. So that link is also there. It's basically, they say like what to look for when we are assessing a tool. like the transparency and other issues associated with this. What to do about basically like what about data privacy, etc. And then the US Department of Education released a report, I think last month. It's very current, if it's not this month. And that's pretty extensive and comprehensive. These are the reports that I know about, and I thought I've given the resources. And of course, like the teacher from Spain was sharing, the Data Services Act of the US or in EU is going to go into motion very soon, I think starting from August. That's going to change a lot of things, especially the use of ChatGPT in class. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyotsna. I am actually very grateful to our participants because there are a lot of interesting questions. So that's a compliment to you, Margus, for such an interactive session. So before I compile some of the questions from the chat box, please, Mr. Uddin from Bangladesh, the floor is yours to ask your question.
I'm MD Good afternoon. I'm MD Kutubuddin from Bangladesh. I have been working here as an assistant teacher English language for 9 years. My question is, Bangladesh is a developing country. Even almost teachers don't know what is artificial intelligence. Even they don't know how to operate a smartphone or PC or computer or laptop. So my question is, how can we use artificial intelligence effectively in our own classroom? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Uddin. We also have another question from Bangladesh who wants to know, in a classroom where you have 70-80 students, how can you use AI in such scenario, from Umme Habiba? If I got the name correctly, yes. So how can we make our classroom fruitful using AI for such, big classroom? So Margus, yes.
Yes, of course. I am not so familiar with situation in Bangladesh and all the context, and of course it might be very different in different schools in many other countries as well. So that's why again I would come back to the question about that we should be the ones who have the agency to take the decisions, taking into account our cultural, structural, material conditions. But how it could be used is that in this case, what I have seen in many contexts is that students often have quite powerful smartphones. Of course, again, it might be that in some cases there are some structural restrictions. For example, smartphones or personal digital devices could not be used in the schools. In this context, it might be discussed again with the ones who actually adopt those different legislations, so that maybe it's time to reconsider the existing regulations, because some research has also shown that if students bring their own device into the learning process, then they are responsible in updating this device, and they start using the methods learned in the learning context in their other context as well, so that they transfer the methods into general use in their practice, and then that's more fruitful. So that one of the solutions might be that the students come with their own devices. Of course, there are many challenges, and in many countries like US, for example, it hasn't been usually done in this way, because then all the students might have different platforms and many data related issues as well. So that it is challenging, definitely. But what could be used, for example, when I mentioned this web-based inquiry science environment, WISE, if the students have whatever device they have, then often in those environments, like in this WISE environment, AI is already integrated in the system, so that AI is there, so that if the students use that system, then they will get automatic feedback and they can benefit from the AI in education. So that it's not so that teachers should develop their own AI models by themselves, so that they can reuse the existing tools and environments where AI has been integrated.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Mr. Uddin. So we are actually, unfortunately, at the end of this webinar. However, Marcus, do you have a few more minutes? Because we have some really interesting questions. So to those of you, if you have to leave, we understand. But if you can stay for a few more minutes to address some of these questions, please feel free to stay. I just want to quickly add to Uddin's comment about a lot of teachers not knowing about AI. So you are, as Margus talked about, teacher agency and also empowering teachers. You are now part of this ASEFClassNet project, and now it's your responsibility to empower teachers around you in your institution and beyond. So that's on you now. Hopefully you will build capacity from this project to also work together with your colleagues in your school as well. So we have a question from Jubaida Salamat from Malaysia. Why is AI generated content dangerous? Can you provide an example of AI generated app that are dangerous? How can we minimize such dangers? So it's related to the negative side of AI in education.
Yes, what I mean by this is that if the AI generated content is not correct, then it might lead us to decisions that are not good, and this might be dangerous. This is shortly. I do not have that kind of concrete examples to give you right now, so that it's more like a theoretical possibility we have to care about, so that this is something to be studied further, and definitely it would be an interesting study to collect that kind of examples of concerns in the future as well, so that then it would be good to share with all of us.
Thank you, Marcus. I quite like what Ruth Regalado from Philippines, she mentioned in the chat box regarding this issue. She thinks that it's essential to agree on a set of guiding principles that must be observed. So I think, yes, guiding principles can help also minimizing the dangers of using AI in education unethically and unsafely. There is a couple of questions related to personalized learning. I think it's one of the very a hot topic when it comes to AI in education, and there are controversial opinions about it because it's related to the right set of data, or whether it's really, can you really personalize learning or not. So our participants, I think it's from Rini, she wants to know to use AI effectively in terms of personalizing teaching and learning based on each individual learner's need. Do you have any advice? Or do you have any comment on personalized learning at all?
Yeah, in general about personalized learning, what I would always like to highlight is that personalized doesn't mean individualized. What is important in this case, and why I also gave this example of interactive dialogues in the context of UC Berkeley, is that actually we have to think how AI could support collaboration between students, and how AI could give feedback about how to engage to learning with other students. So that this is maybe important to mention, so that AI is not increasing inequality among students, because this is also one danger we have to be aware of, that actually if we individualize learning, then everybody will be in their own tower, and they do not communicate with others. So that this is something important in this context.
Thank you, Marcus. So we have a very important question as well, and I think we will address only one more question. And some of the questions are actually related to the applications of AI tools in education, and our next two sessions are designed to address that. So I will not be addressing them. I will not be collecting them for Marcus today. So the next question is from Rocio Viega. My apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. How can we develop materials in a subject on AI in education without having approved the regulation? Will we be making a mistake? So, yeah. So if they want to take ownership, without any regulations? It's a very, I think it's a very complicated area, but what would be your advice, Margus?
Now, I should say that it's good to start somewhere, so that no, definitely it's not good just not to make the first step. So that what we could do is again a systematic literature review on what has been already published. And now AI is really a field in education that is evolving so fast. There is even a specific journal what I suggest you to look at. It's International Journal of Artificial Intelligence in Education, so that it's dedicated specifically to AI in education. So that I think that this is already giving a good guide to make that kind of decisions.
Thank you, Margus. But with this, we really want to, give our sincere thanks to Margus for making time at really late at night from all the way from California to provide this, to speak on this webinar. So thank you so much, Margus. This has been really interactive, and I think we have a lot of food for thoughts from today's session, as well as a lot of really interesting resources. So I want to thank you to those who actively share resources as well in the chat box. So thank you so much for that. And with that, let's see what we have next. So those of you who have been asking about, practical applications of AI tool to make your physics, chemistry, and biology lessons fun, you will be happy to know that we have an educator from Singapore who is very well known here and works directly with the Ministry of Education. So he will be talking about, so his name is Mr. Ghazali Abdul Wahab. He is a teacher as well as a speaker as well in Singapore to empower teachers. So he will be talking about some of the relevant and effective use of AI in education. And he will be talking about these tools from an engagement by design and from an educator's perspective. So please do join the next session, and you'll be happy to know that you don't have any sessions next week. You have a bit of a break so that you can already digest and then have some time to go through the resources from the past 2 sessions. Hope that you will use this time to stay up to date, as well as to kind of, build your understanding, particularly on the first bucket of AI, which is on AI and education, AI literacy. Then with this week's gap, from June 28 onward, which is on Wednesday, we will be focusing on the application of AI tools in education. So with that, thank you so much. And if we couldn't respond to your questions, our sincere apologies. We will try our best to gather as much as possible and communicate with our speaker to at least have some responses for the questions that are different than the ones have been addressed today. So please be a bit patient with us when we try to gather those responses. Thank you so much. Have a very lovely day in Europe, and the day is ending in Asia, so good for us. We can have a lovely, relaxing evening. Thank you. And Margus, a good night to you.